to use any symbol to preface the variable name in the SQL Server, you do. So the two @ symbols are system variables. A single @ symbol is your variable. So I'm going to say select @ version. I only know a few of these. Sometimes I need to know what the version is. Notice now I've executed 2 queries at once. I got the first one and I got the second one, and I got 2 result fields. Now you can adjust the size of these result panes if you like, but you'll quickly wish to get rid of them quickly, and the way you gotta do it is with Control-R. So that's your first golden nugget of the evening. Control-R to get that away. Control-R, I believe, brings it back. So do that. So you'll quickly realize that in Access, when you run a query, right, because I can go in Access and start a query, go into SQL, I can't run multiple queries in Access. But here I can, with one query, when I can do multiple queries. All right. Now, if you have a query in Access, a simple select query in Access, you could bring that over here and be able to use it almost literally verbatim. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start Access. I'm going to bring up my demo app. We have this demo that we use with all new leads at the company. We use it almost every day. I'm going to my queries here. This is the same database backend that I use with the other one. Now notice these are action queries. I'm not going to talk about that now, but I got this select query here. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select Design View. And this is not using anything. This is not using anything fancy, right? No functions during the VBA code, no temp vars. It's not referencing another form. None of that stuff will work in SQL Server. Why? Because SQL Server can't see you another form, right? So if I have a criteria here that says form bang, field name, and so forth, form name, field name, bang, whatever that is, or a custom function I created in my query, it's not going to translate to SQL Server, but this one will. So I'm going to go to SQL View. I'm going to do Control-C, Alt-Tab, Mirror. I'm a keyboard warrior. Control-V, and I'm going to run this. Invalid object name. Temp estimated. Okay, this is because this is a temporary table. Of course, I have to pick a query that uses a temporary table in my Access front end. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find one to make my point. No, this is also, I believe. No, this is good. All right. So I'm going to take this one here, bring it over. Obviously, SQL Server is not going to see your temporary tables in the Access front end. Oh my goodness. We select an object or column name is missing or empty and select into statements. All right, so let's see here. Select from where there's no. Okay, here. See this? This is one of the issues. In Access, a double quote is used to surround. Now I could go back to Access. I can remove that double quote to single quote, and it'll work just fine as well. And I started doing that, right? So I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna do single quote 0 single quote, and when I execute the query, all right, I execute the query. It works fine. So I've gotten into the habit of using single quote now because I almost always I'm jostling between the two, between Access and SQL Server. And I don't want to be able to have the hassles, right? So I'm going to copy this again, come over here, press Control-A, backspace, erase that, Control-V. And now I'm going to press F5 to execute. So F5 is a keyboard shortcut to execute. And again, I got an error message. And what's the error message? Over here. All right, so I'm not going to go into Access and change it. I'm going to single quote there. All right, now execute. All right, so my point is, a lot of you who are starting out with SQL Server know how to use the query builder in Access, right? Which is what this is here, the query builder in Access, right? You can drag table system, and you can easily add criteria and so forth. You can continue doing that. And just copy the suite, go over, and then when you see an error message over here, you notice that when I first pasted it, right, I did Control-V, and right away it showed me the squiggly lines here. If I hover over it, it'll tell me the error message, which is something pretty neat that you don't get with the Access query builder until you run the query. So here, as you're live with the query, it's checking things to make sure it's okay. That's a behavior you can turn off. I don't know why would you, but if you wanted to, you can turn that off. Now you'll notice that there is what's called a parse, which will check your SQL syntax. This is golden nugget number 2. So you can use this and it'll tell you, yeah, everything looks good. Now I've had instances where I'll check the code, my SQL code, and then click on execute, and it will bomb on me. But it's nice to have a simple check on the data, especially when you're doing an action query, right? If I'm going to run a query that's going to update 100,000 items, increase their price by 10%, number 1, I'll probably check the syntax before I run it. Number 2, I'll probably do that with a batch transaction so I can roll it back and do something wrong with the query, which will be something probably we'll talk on at the next actual SQL Server Academy session, commits and batch transactions. Great. So that's one way of doing queries. The other way of doing queries is you can build a query right here in SQL Server. Right? If I right-click on the query window, I can come down here, Design Query and Editor. And now you're going to be pleasantly surprised that this is very similar to Access, where I can add tables to a query, right? And now I want company ID, and I want document type ID, created on, and so forth. So as I'm selecting these, notice that it's building the SQL statement down here for you. So if I wanted to, I can come down here, create it on, I can add another field from that TBL company DAX. I can just write dot created by. I can manually modify that, and when I click out of it, it's automatically check the created by, and it's over here. So this is another way I learned T-SQL, right? I can expand this, by the way. I can expand this. Another way is I create the query, the SQL Server Management Studio. I add my tables. I can double-click to change the relationship with these two tables I want to. By right-clicking, I can say, okay, select all rows from TBL companies and so forth, and I saw how it would modify the SQL. And what's going to happen over the months that you're doing this is you're going to get a lot better at writing SQL code. When I first started down this journey with SQL Server, I did not type SQL code at all. I mean, I went here to the most basic select statements many moons ago. Now I'm in SQL Server Management Studio. I'm typing queries. I'm doing CTEs. I'm doing all that without using the query designer. So I'm glad that I'm at that level where I can write a query without the help of the query designer for the most part. All right. So I'm going to click on OK. I'm going to again check the syntax, right? Query parser, everything do. I'm going to do this, and I get my query results. Now I used to teach Microsoft Access here in Chicago. And one of the things I would tell my students when they do queries is always know the answer before you ask the question, right? You just did this query. Now, if you're an experienced Access developer like I am, you know as well as I do, there are multiple ways to run the same query. So you want to be able to assure, you want to verify that your queries are correct. So one of the things that I probably end up doing is when I have a query is I want to double check with Excel to make sure that the right numbers. Now notice here I got 111 rows, and it took less than a microsecond to run, right, on this here. And so what I need to do is I need to double check, especially when you're dealing with money. I once got hired by a public university here, not public, a private university in Chicago that has a $9 billion endowment fund. And believe it or not, they asked me to design an Access SQL Server system for them. I tried to dissuade them from doing that, so I wanted to just go with QuickBooks, but they wanted a custom accounting system to reconcile their statements from their broker. Because if you donated 1,000 shares to the University of Google, for example, back then Google was at $100 a share, you donate 1,000 of them, their bylaw says they have to sell that, receive the cash, and then they can distribute that money with their own stocks. So they don't retain any stock, they immediately sell them, get their money, and then buy whatever shares they want with that based on their investment goals. Well, my system would take that statement, import it, and allocate the transactions. If you ever did not-for-profit accounting, which I don't recommend you do because it bored the hell out of me, and know more about not-for-profit accounting that I care to want to know about the rest of my life. It wasn't easy. I had to learn how to do accounting for not-for-profits, and then I learned to design. Bottom line, it took me a year.
Hello, Juan. This is Susan. We've lost audio.
I lost my computer. My computer's only rebooted, so give me a second. I'm logging in now. Can you hear me?
No,
yes, I can hear you.
All right, give me a second. I have to. For some reason, my computer completely rebooted. Where was I? I was talking about, verify, know the answer before you know the question. So in that complex financial system, you're dealing with cents, right? And you're dealing with dollars. And everything has to be down to the penny. You can't say, I'm off by $2. That's not going to be ever okay in an accounting system, right? So always know the answer before you ask the question. In other words, you always know the results of your query or verify the results of your query before you start designing, or after you design the query, get to know the answer alternatively somewhere else. All right, Dave, have you guys found the discussion useful so far? Have you come away with some golden nuggets? All right, thank you. Greg, are you really in Cambodia right now? I wonder what time is it in Cambodia. I see there's somebody here that says Greg from Cambodia. All right. Almost done. Let's see here. 7:30 a.m. All right, you are in Cambodia. Well, welcome. Okay, let me go ahead and start the Skype for Business. Now, honestly, there are people on this call like Klaus and Dan Moorhead and some other Access MVPs that have a lot of experience with this. And I always tell people, look, you know what? I don't have all the answers. But when I first started down this journey, there was no website to help me, go about how to do this stuff, right? I had to learn my own. And that's why I started a blog at accessexperts.com/blog. And it was frustrating for me because there was only a single book on the topic of Access with SQL Server. And so it was a real pain to learn this stuff. And that's when I decided to start the blog, and that's when I became an Access MVP to share my knowledge. But, you're going to come across a lot of questions, and it's not going to be easy. All right, I'm ready to continue this. Give me a second here. I'll be right back. Right, I'm back. Can you hear me? Ms. Pine?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. We're back. Okay. So let me go ahead and pick my database, right? And once I pick my database, now I can click on New Query or Control-N for the keyboard. All right, so we talked about the query designer. And it's too bad that I lost that query, but let me go ahead and bring it up again. I'll build a quick query here. There's a point I want to make here. So I had companies, I had company docs, right? And I'm done with that, and then I can pick company ID, company name, document type ID, create it. I'm just picking random stuff here. All right. Now, one of the things that that in Access is Access always insists on putting the table name from the field, which is good query design. I'm not saying that's bad query design, But if you need to modify this, like I did in the demo before I crashed and burned, I had to go comma TBL companies. Now look what happens here as I'm typing this here, TBL companies. It has a IntelliSense. And now I'm going to say dot created by, excuse me. I can pick the field I want. So as I'm typing, it knows what I'm doing. So I'm going to get rid of this by clicking on this auto hide. Now you'll be able to see this. So I love that. IntelliSense. I wish we had that in Access. I mean, it's one of my biggest problems with. Now they try to do that something similar, right? If you go into Access Query Designer, you start typing the criteria, it'll come up, but it doesn't do that when you're doing SQL View like it does here. So I positively love it. All right. So that's one way. The other way is you can actually drag, right? If you need to, you can actually go into a table here, TBL companies and columns, and then I can drag one of these columns over. I already have companies. No, I don't have company zip, so I'll go ahead and drag company zip over here, and it should insert that in there for me. Of course, there you go. So I'll do comma and company zip, right? I'll do that for me. All right. Almost always I use IntelliSense. So you know, it's a real chore sometimes to be able to pick companies and documents. So I'm going to right-click here. I'm going to show you another nugget here. Right-click Design Query in Editor. And I'm going to come in here, and it says From Companies. I'm going to say As C, right? I'm going to give it a name as C. And then TBL Company Docs as D, because it's company docs. So let me come over here. I'm going to click over here. And notice that when I click over here on the top portion, everything now is C.company or D.company, right? And on C.company, go D.company. When I click on OK, voila. So now, when I do comma, I do D dot, and now I'm in the document table. And when I do comma and I do C dot, I'm in the company table. So, you know, it's just a great way for me to be able to use these synonyms for my tables, right? Now, for this simple query like this, it may not be a big of a deal, but when you have a large table with lots of joins, it's just it just really is a time saver to be able to use the C and the D and so forth. And next month, when we talk about CTE, common table expressions, it's going to really come in handy. All right. So I talked about how to get started with queries. And then, so what are we doing with these queries? Because in Access, you can save the query, right? I can go in there, save it, and queries and so forth. But here, what am I doing when I'm saving? When I click the save icon, I'm saving the SQL script. I'm not saving the query to the database, right? If I go in here and I say, you know, temp OK to delete SQL script, I put in the OK to delete. That way, when I browse my hard drive, I know I was testing it. I click on OK. All I did was save it. But when I come into the database, where are my queries? Well, in SQL Server, queries are called views. So when you see views, think queries. And here, I'm going to squeeze this. I'm going to squeeze that. I'm going to come down to my view section. So now, I love this organization, by the way. And by the way, you can shrink this. I wish we could do this in a database design. I can shrink this. And now I've got views. I can come into views, and I got all these views. So what is a view? Well, a view is a query, but it's so much more than that in SQL Server. In SQL Server, when it executes a query, it creates what's called an execution plan. Now, I'm going to show you the execution plan for this query by holding down the Control key, next nugget, Control key, Control L as in Larry. Right? And here it shows you the execution plan. And you can hover over these, and please don't ask me questions about this stuff because I know the bare minimum about execution plans and optimizing execution plans. And one of the reasons I know the bare minimum is because usually as an Access developer, I'm not dealing with tables that have millions of rows, right? I'm not a target. And honestly, if you're dealing with tables with millions of rows, I've had Access applications that do, by the way. Honestly, you probably shouldn't be using Access, right? If you're target, you're not going to be using this against your order database. So when it comes to execution plans, understanding this, it's no big deal. But one of the things that I do use this for is this will actually suggest an index, and remind me to talk to you about that in our next session in January, how to use this to find out missing indexes. Now, the whole reason I brought up the execution plan is that these queries get better with time. It's like wine. They get better with time. Why? Because when SQL Server, right, sees a view is being used by your application repeatedly, it's going to keep this execution plan in memory so it can execute it faster. And you will actually reap the benefits of that when you'll notice that when you create a view that's integral to your application, as time goes by, you'll notice that that view attached to a form or to whatever process you have in Access is returning results quicker back to Access. So it does an optimization by keeping it in memory. Now, if you use SQL Server Express, you should know three things, right? How much memory does SQL Server Express use? 1 GB of RAM. There is a limitation, 1 core, and the size of 11 GB. That was prior to SQL Server 2018. I believe 2018 is a little bit more liberal and uses more cores. But for 2008 Express and up to 2012, it's using those three things. So having this execution plan in memory on the server that's only using 1 gig of RAM is a big deal. And of course, Microsoft wants you to upgrade to the regular SQL Server, right? But even though with those limitations, SQL Server runs circles around Access with an Access backend. It just does. It's like going from a bicycle to a car. So my point here is these views all have execution plans. When you save this view here, it'll save it with the execution plan, and you can then fine-tune the execution plan if you are so inclined to do that. But let's go ahead and show you something else. You're going to see system views. Do not mess with these. All of these start with information or sys. Don't mess with these. I never use them. They're internal to SQL Server. You can use them in terms of reading from them, right? I can click here. I can right-click on the view, and I can say, okay, select top 100 rows, 1,000 rows. It'll execute the view for me, right? In this case, they came back with nothing. And we use some of these views to parse through the tables in the application, which is a pretty neat thing. All right, so to create a view of your own, this database, you can right-click, create view, new view. And this is how I started, right? I mean, I don't create views like this anymore, but this is how I started. Same thing. I get TBL companies, TBL company docs. Same concept. I'm selecting fields, right? I'm selecting these things here, right? A couple of things that you'll notice that there's an alias column which you don't have in SQL Server and Access. In Access, if you want to give it a different name, you would have to do client name colon and then name company ID. In this case, I'm just going to say client name. Now I've given the custom name to this column. When I execute the query, actually that's what I want to do. When I execute the view, excuse me. When I execute this view, it's going to show me the results of it in the as company name, right? So that's one way of doing that. And the other way is you'll notice that there's a sort field here. So this, you can sort the ascending, right? Descending like you would in the sort order. You can define, okay, this is ascending. I can change the order here. I can make this one 1, and then the other one would be, I can make the other one 2, or make them both 1. And the filter, when you think filter, think where clause, right? So, you know, I don't know. I'm just going to put some random stuff, greater than 100. And this would be ORs and so forth. So notice that as I'm doing this, just like I did with the other query window, I'm seeing the SQL code down here. which is pretty neat, right? So I can, again, come down here and change it from TBL companies SC, right, just like I showed you earlier, and TBL company docs SD. Click over here on my grid. It'll automatically adjust, and it takes a lot less space too. All right, great. When you're ready, you're going to save this view with the floppy icon, and you're going to use view underscore, right? I mean, that's a methodology that you'll see a lot of developers share. They like to use view underscore, so you can't confuse this view with a system view. Just like your store procedures are going to say USP, which is user store procedure, underscore. We use view underscore test here in this case. And I'm going to click on OK. All right, order by. We got to talk about that here in a second. We're going to talk about the order by. And order by and views are not needed. If you want to order something, you use the order by in Access, right? When you link this view back to a table, which is the whole point of creating a view in many cases. So I saved that. Now it says view underscore test. Now I can use the same view with other views, right? So I can stack my views like we do in Access. Sometimes we have a query process that will save one query and then another query, and then we use a query to use both the first and second query, right? Until we stack our queries. When I first started with SQL Server, I was doing the same thing. I was creating multiple views and then stacking them. I don't do that anymore. It's not recommended. It still works. That's not stopping you from doing that, but there's a better way, which is CTE. We'll talk next month. You'll notice that CTE is coming up a lot. This is pretty great. Looking forward to showing you about how that works next time. So now that you save the view in SQL Server database, now you can link to that view in your Access front end, just like you link in a regular table. Yes.
Excuse me, Juan. The audio's gone a bit doolala. It's a bit weird, the sound.
Audio is too low?
It's corrupt. It's all mingled. We're not hearing you clearly.
Okay. Let me see if I can do something about that.
Sounds better now.
Okay. You know, somebody's probably watching Netflix in my home here. All right. So, thank you. Thank you for the feedback. So, now that you've got this view here, you can link it to your Access front end, right? And then Access it acts like another table, except for the fact that Access won't let you edit the data. And that's the next nugget. In order to be able to edit views and Access, use them with your forms and data, your forms as data sources, you need to be able to have an index on them. Now, I'm not going to go over everything about that, but I did create a blog post on how to add indexes with views. And you're going to find that blog post along with other great blog posts for those who are beginning with SQL Server at accessexperts.com/start here. I've compiled the best blog posts I feel that a newbie with SQL Server could learn from, and I put them in here in my website, Access Experts. So let me just give you the link here. Thank you for that link, Greg. Greg is on the money there. And one of these will tell you, let me see which one it is, index. Oh. Let's see, insert a record, create temporary learn, great links to help you get started. Download, use SQL Server NAT client, insert. All right, I think I'm going to have to use Greg's link here. Use SQL Server views with Access index needed for editing data. So this walks you through why you need the index, how to create the index, and so forth. Now notice that you're creating the index with VBA on the Access side. You're not creating the index on the SQL Server side. Now you can do indexes on SQL Server with SQL binding, and I'm not going to get into that. It's a high-end topic, but I always use indexes on the Access side. When you link a table manually in SQL Server, Access will actually ask you which is the primary key for that view. But because we always link tables programmatically at IT Impact, we use specialized code for that, and that's the code that's seen in that blog post. But anyway, back to, there's some great blog post here Let's start here. Let's see. I thought that was green index was in there, one of these. Great links, learn all about great temporary tables. Oh my goodness, I don't have that one here, do I? I have to add it here to this one. I did want you guys to see this blog post. Yeah, I have to do that. Thank you. Thank you for that link. All right. So views are great. I love them. Why is it great? Well, think about it. Access thinks it's a table. It doesn't know it's a view. It doesn't care that's a view. All it knows is just another entity in SQL Server that it can attach to a form, a query, and access using your VBA. It doesn't really care what it is. It's just a table. It's like a table. Now, a lot of times when you migrate, remember at the beginning when I showed you part one, I said when you move to SQL Server, you may actually experience slowness. Why is that? Because a lot of times the ODBC driver is not really good at translating your queries, and Access needs to download all the data from a query down to the front end, execute the query, and show you the results. And you'll notice that because it takes forever to compute the query. But if you have a query for a report or for a process or for a form that's got 5, 6 tables, multiple joins, multiple word clauses, right? I mean, the queries there are just a mess. You want to migrate those to a view. Create the view in SQL Server, link it back to Access. You can notice that it's almost instantaneous. What used to take many seconds or minutes, it's almost instantaneous. You got to leverage the power of views in order to be able to optimize the relationship between Access and SQL Server. I can't say this enough. So learn how to create views, learn how to optimize them, learn how to create indexes for your views where needed, and then start using them in your database. The other, many years ago, I was interviewing a candidate for my firm, and he's known in the industry, believe it or not. He was known by many of my peers. And I said, you know what, let me interview him. He told me he was looking for work, and I was going to interview him as an associate, right, producer. And so I said, well, do you work with SQL Server? Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure do. Oh, really? Tell me about how do you, I like to quiz people. I said, tell me how do you optimize a view? Oh, I don't use views. I said, well, you just said you use SQL Server. Oh, yeah, I use SQL Server. I migrate the tables to SQL Server, and then I just link it back to the Access front end. I do everything in Access. So I knew right away it wasn't for me. If you don't know anything about views, you're missing out on the potential of SQL Server, and you're going to let your users suffer through that blue rotating circle on your Access front end because you're too stubborn to learn views. You don't belong here. So that didn't go anywhere. And the other aspect of this, besides views, is stored procedures, which we'll cover next month in January, right? And so another way to create a view, remember I had created very similar, that's not it, let me close that. This is a very similar, okay, so this is a very similar query that created my view. I could, once I create it here, this is how I usually create views now. I come in here and I'll say create view, view W underscore test, okay, to delete, to as. And now, when I preface this query, we'll create view as, and I run this query, what am I running the query? I'm not running the results of the query. I'm running the entirety, and I'm creating that view. When I run it a second time, it tells me there's already a view called this, right? So this is how I create view. Why do I do it this way? Because a lot of times my views are very complex. I need to troubleshoot them. Remember I said I need to know the answer before I ask the question? I need to troubleshoot why they're not working. And so for me, it's very easy to come in here, tweak my query, execute it, see the results. Once I know I got the right results, then I just type create view, right, as, and execute that to create my view. Again, if you're working with a beta and a production environment, you want to save the script so that you can then run it later when you're ready to roll out to production. So by creating the view here, it's the same thing I can do over here. Now, CTEs have a little bit more problem. This is great for simple views. This is going to be a lot harder with a much more complex views that we usually do at IT Impact. And sometimes you can't even design them with this. You have to use them with a query window. All right. A couple of things. Number one, you cannot create action queries this way, right? A view is not an action query. If you want to delete, update, right? CRUD. If you want to delete, update, or or insert, you have to use this methodology, right? Now, if I'm deleting, right, I'm going to say delete these fields from this table, right? If I'm going to update, I'm going to say update, right? The update keyword. I got to use that. I can't use my view for that. So views are select views only. That's number one. Number two is the fact that I don't transfer every query to the Access application into SQL Server. I just don't. Sometimes we get hired to do complex Access databases that I literally, the other day, had 1,000 queries in this Access application. I kid you not. It's an ERP system for a customer here in Chicago. 1,000 queries, and I think about that. I said, you know what, this is just too much. So we ran some custom code that we have to find out which queries are no longer used, and we were able to whittle down to a grand total of 700. 700 is a lot of queries still. I'm not going to go in and create 700 views, right? And so usually what we do in that case is we only create views for those queries that take too long to execute. Now, Susan, who's on this call, is a senior Access developer at IT Impact. She'll work many times on a project, and we'll start what we do. We call them pass 1, pass 2, right? Pass 2. In other words, she creates the alpha version. It's the first pass. She runs the application. She'll notice that a query is taking 5 seconds. I mean, 5 seconds is a long time, right? 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Usually, we want to get that to 3 seconds or less. And so she'll use her judgment. And again, speed is all about judgment, and create the view. And now it's a half a second, right? Now, why do we do? Then we'll give them the alpha version to the customer. Now, sometimes she'll call me and says, "Juan, I got this really complex query that's taking me a long time to create a view for. What do you think I should do, or should we invest the time in converting these queries that are because they pay us by the hour. So why am I going to convert everything to a view and spend their money on stuff when I need to do on other things in the application, right? So we'll say, you know what, let's leave like that. Now, we've been pleasantly surprised by a customer calling us up after they get the alpha and they say, Juan, that query, that database program Susan's working on is faster now. And we were concerned because the query was taking 15 seconds, but guess what? When it was in Access, it was taking a minute and a half. And now that it's in 15 seconds, they're really happy. So speed is in the eyes of the beholder. So I'm not going to blow my budget, convert every query into a view, and then be short and not be able to address the mission-critical aspects of the project. And I use mission-critical a lot when I'm talking to clients who want to throw me. Because what happens is they see the alpha. Oh, can Susan do this? Can Susan do that? And I'm like, yeah, she could, but that's not mission critical. We're trying to address the mission critical. I'm glad you love her work. I'm glad you're happy with what she's done, but we got to finish this phase 1 and then archive that for phase 2. Unless it's mission critical, we're not going to get from the project plan. But, I personally, when I'm running a query, it takes 15 seconds, I'm going to pull my hair out, the little hair I have left, which is not much. All right, so good. So I'm going to open the floor now to questions because I know some of you might be hungry like I am. So what about performance trade-offs for pass-through versus local? Great question, Dan. And that is when you think pass-through, it's the same thing as running it here in SQL Server Management Studio, right? Something. So when you think pass-through, what Alias is doing is saying, here's a query. I don't know anything about this query. I have no idea. You execute, return results back to me. So the same thing as running the view. But the problem with the pass-through is it's not a view and it's not stored on the SQL Server, so therefore the execution plan is created and runs every time you run that pass-through query, right? Think about it. When you create a view here, these views, they stores the execution plan with the view, and now you got statistics that you can use to optimize and create more queries. If you rely too heavily on pass-throughs, you're not going to get the benefit of that view, right? I use pass-throughs. Don't misunderstand me. I use pass-throughs all the time. But if I see that's a query that's used significantly, I create a view. Because, of course, you want to do that. Mary Chapman, oh my gosh, you know, now you're talking, Bob, you're talking my language. Mary Chapman, I have her book here with me. I love that book. And as you know, that was the last book ever published. And I can't tell you how many times I want to publish my own book, Modern Access with SQL Server by Juan Soto, because there really is a need for something like that in the market right now. The economies of books are now, it used to be in the old days in 2000 and before, you write a book, you could pay off your mortgage with it. All those book writers like Alison Bartar, who used to be an ex-MVP, a good friend of mine, he was a prolific book writer. Ben Cloutier, who works for us, ex-MVP, also a prolific book writer. All those people stopped writing books because the economics are just not there. So one of the things that I was thinking about is, if I want to write my book, I'm going to build a community around it, right? So let's say, for example, I come up with my book, I'm going to self-publish it. I'm not going to take it to some Microsoft Press or anything like that. So that way I can, every time I sell it for $65, I make $65. But not only are you paying me for $65, but you get exclusive content to a new website I was going to build that's got a firewall. So if you have the book, you get one free-year membership. And then you get exclusive access to more code, and you get access to asking me questions. And I was going to build this whole big infrastructure around it. And $1 an hour. See, George can tell you about that. George wrote many books. George Hepworth, Access MVP extraordinaire from Seattle, is on the line. You're right, George. What is the average min overhead for pass-through? You know what? Again, a pass-through query is going to run same like you run a SQL Server Studio, but you won't reap the benefits of a view that's stored with execution plan and will keep the execution plan in memory. Any other questions, guys? I see Dan is typing some stuff there. You can also talk if you want to share your thoughts here. Video course is better. I have paid for others' courses. Oh, that's interesting, Greg. How much would you pay for a video course, a 10-part series on how to become a master with Access with SQL Server? How much would you pay for that, Greg? I see Greg Taylor is writing. Greg from Cambodia. $200. Wow. $200. Thank you. If I can get 100 people to give me $200, $300. All right. You know, you just got a bid, buddy. Do I hear 4? Anybody hear 4? We was asked to write a book for Indian publisher. Was wondering what maybe with that. You mean I went to so much less. And then you look, Dan.
There's a very good course, access to SQL Server with 13 parts, which is free. So it's difficult to say a price for that.
Yeah, you know, the thing is,
YouTube has really great courses. They have shit ones, but the one I think it's called Wise Old. They have great courses, and they cost nothing.
Yeah, you know, you get what you pay for, right? So some of them are great, some of them are really bad. The other option is this. The other thing is, Dan was thinking about writing the book. Well, 2 things. When you have your own practice like Dan has, I think, Dan, you have your own practice, right? You can use that to get clients because you can say, when they call you, say, hey, Dan, you know, we saw your ad on Google AdWords, and, oh, yeah, I'm a book author, I'm an Access MVP. It starts piling up, right? So it really does help you with your cred. All right. Bob, other good website for learning Access SQL Server. You know what? UtterAccess.com. I'm going to write that in there for you, Bob. And George Hepworth is an admin at UtterAccess.com. they actually compete over there to answer your question as soon as possible. So not just my website, but other access. My website, I just don't have the time to answer people's questions right away. Other access, there's a whole library of questions you can search for. And one of the things, here's a nugget for you when you search on Google. So I'm going to bring up my Google search. You may want to force the answer to otheraccess.com. So for example, is create view, right? SQL Server site. You can say AccessUserGroups.com. In my case, I'll say otheraccess.com. And that site keyword will force all the results to be in other access. So it's a great way to force it to the Microsoft website or the AccessUserGroups website. Sometimes searching for something on my website, I use this site keyword, so keep in mind that. For prioritized queries to limit data paths to access front, but is this the right approach? Look, there is no right or wrong approach. As long as it works for you, Greg, passive queries, they work for you, God bless you, man. If you're happy with the performance and you're thinking that then it's great. But if you're having problems with the performance, then you want to be able to use views. Now, next month, we're going to talk about Easy AD ODB. That makes it very easy for you to pass queries, do pass-through queries, and not pass-through queries, but to query SQL Server from your code. Learning how to build views, functions, and store procedures in SQL Server is very helpful in being able to deliver results more quickly. And I say, yeah, I agree, Greg. I'm glad you agree with me on that. Pass-throughs are read-only. Great, George. Thank you for reminding me that, yes. Pass-throughs, you can bind a pass-through query to a report, and I do that often because you're not going to edit data in a report. But you cannot bind a pass-through query to a form, right? And so in that case, you would have to use a pass-through query with a select statement and access, right? So let's say, for example, you have this great pass-through query. You want to edit the data. Well, you can't bind the pass-through query to a form. So what you do is you go to this blog post here, how to set up temp tables using temp tables. Create temporary tables and access with SQL data. And you create a temporary table in your local front end based on the pass-through. Then you bind that temporary table to the form. And then somehow you return the results back to SQL Server, which is a lot of work I tend to shy from. Yeah, Dan is actually presenting next month at lunchtime, Access User Group lunchtime. So please come to that. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that, volunteering. We're always looking for speakers, so if you want to speak at any one of our user groups, you can approach the chapter president and be able to speak with one of our topics. All right, any other questions before we go?
Just a tip, I just learned SQL, creating SQL by using the format, the SQL, and you have free formatter for SQL. I can't do without, because what you get out of a view is always unformatted, and you can't read that. But if you format it correctly with Pullman format or whatever, then you can read and understand it. So I use that free from Apex, that format, and format all things I get before I try to read them, and then I read the query and understand it.
Yeah, there is a website that does that, Klaus. Let me see.
Yeah, that's the Pullman's.
Yeah, it's the SQL Formatter. This is the one I've used. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my query. This is nugget number 22.
Yeah, but the idea, if you use there's a free tool from Apex, and install it in your management studio. You just do right click on the query and in the query field, and you got it formatted.
Yeah, that's good when you can install those tools, but a lot of times I'm working with customer systems, I'm not allowed to do that.
Right.
But thank you for bringing that up, Dan and Klaus. I appreciate that, Klaus. But this one is the SQL Formatter, dpdriver.com. I'll pass this along to you guys. All right. Well, Look, my wife is giving me dirty looks. She wants me to come down for dinner. So I appreciate all you guys coming in today. Oh, Bob's got one last question. When do you use queries that include parameters from forms? How do you do that? Great question, Bob. There's several ways you can do that. One of the ways we're going to do it is with Easy ADODB. Easy ADODB in your code. You can do that. The other thing is you can create the view, link as a table, and then create a local SQL server, that local access query that does have parameters, right? That is pointing to a form. So that's the other way of doing that, because SQL Server doesn't know your form. So you link the table, and then once you link the table, then you can create a new query against that view. So it's like stacking queries, but that's the only way. And the other way is with a pass-through query, but you have to create the pass-through query in code. Well, you can't. You can't create a pass-through query in code, and then use a query, a string to add the string up together to create that pass-through query, but you cannot include parameters, local parameters into a pass-through query. Maybe we'll bring that up in a subject here. All right, so thank you very much, everybody. This has been Juan Soto. If you love this, please tweet about this presentation. Go to my LinkedIn profile, leave a message, a thank you note, or feedback. Please join our Access with SQL Server group on LinkedIn and leave feedback on that post for this night. I want to make everybody envious for not showing up tonight. You guys missed the best presentation ever. You know, so maybe if they see your feedback and comments on Twitter, LinkedIn, they'll think about joining us in January. So look, this has been a great year for me at IT Impact and for Susan. We've noticed a huge uptick. We're running ragged, but we do this out of love. We volunteer for this movement, right? Access User Groups, that organization I created. And so we do it out of love. We love Access. We love helping you guys. But we want you guys to be successful. And for this holiday, I give thanks for having you guys in my life. I give thanks for wonderful employees like Susan. I give thanks for my friends such as George. I give thanks for Dan for volunteering. I give thanks for Klaus for sending me blog posts and writing about it. We got a lot to do thanks for, and have a great holiday, and we'll see you back here in January. So long, everybody. Thank you very much.